Welcome to the Black Jackson Estate Podcast, Season 7. We're back like we never left. It is Black History Month. We are so excited for another season of the Black Jackson Estate Podcast. We've been doing this show since 2019. If you are new to the Black Jackson Estate Podcast, you've never heard of us before, get ready for a wild ride. You're going to have a lot of fun. We bring you perspectives on Michael Jackson from a Black millennial perspective, and I'm so excited. I'm User 1, and I'm joined today by User 1.5. User 1.5, happy 2025. This is our first episode of the season, right?
Yeah.
We've got Patreon happening, but this is our first episode of the season. How you feeling? It's 2025. We're staying alive. It's a lot going on in the world, but it's Black History Month. Tell the people, tell me, I want to know, how you feeling? Happy Black History Month.
Yeah, I mean, I literally feel like, staying up. That's us. In the United States, for sure. Okay? We've lived 1,000 lives in the last, how many days has Donnie been in office? 37?
Man.
40.
Donald Trump has been the president since the 20th, I believe, is when he took office. So
It's been
about a month. It's been about a month.
God, it feels like again, we've lived 1,000 lives in the last 30 days, and
sure.
We are just doing the best that we can. Welcome to season, what is it, 6?
This is season 7. 7, you know, that's Michael's number. 777.
Season 7.
Taj's number too, 777,000. 77, baby. It's also the number of completion and perfection.
Please
if
don't
you
say
are
Taj's
religious.
name. We're starting on a high note. We're starting.
I'm just saying
in
that
the
it's
land of
season 7.
positivity.
We are positive.
And
it's season 7. We're
love.
getting going. I didn't say. Okay. Anyway. Happy
Okay.
Black History Month. I
It's
can't
Black
say that
History
enough.
Month.
Happy
We
Black
don't
History
have,
Month.
DEI is being stripped out of everything, but we're still blackity black 365 days a year. So happy Black History Month to everybody. And yeah, welcome to season 7. We're excited to have you. And look, you got video. Hi guys.
Well, listen, if you're a part of our Patreon, then you already know we've been on the video tip, right? But we're rolling this out because we have so many people ask for it. But you guys, we don't do this all day. We don't get paid to do this. So we do it on our own time. Let me be real clear about things. But speaking of the Patreon, if you're not a member or you want to see what's happening over there, head on over to the Patreon, sign up. It's a great way to support our show. It helps us cover the cost of our show, but also it's a great way to connect with other Michael fans, connect with us. It's all about, I say this, you come for the conversation, you stay for the community, because we got a great little community over on the Patreon. When you say so.
We really do. We
have a lot of
really
fun.
Great group of Michael fans and with really good insight. Yeah, you should definitely come and join, hang out with us, because why wouldn't you want to?
Absolutely. If you're
cool.
if you're a Michael Jackson fan, and if you're a millennial, if you're a music lover, right? Like, you will love these perspectives, even if you're not any of those things, but you love great conversation about phenomenal artists and music history. You will love the Black Jackson Estate Podcast. User 1.5.
Yeah.
It's Black History Month.
It
I want
is.
you to tell me how you've been honoring and celebrating Black History Month. I want you to talk to the people about that sweatshirt you've got on. I'm going to tell them about mine, but I want you to tell them about yours first.
Well, first of all, I got this shirt in Puerto Rico last year. It's actually a Bacardi shirt. It says, "Do what moves you." And it's got all these wonderful people of color on it because it is Black History Month. Not only are we celebrating Black people, we're celebrating people of color this month. And what have I been doing? Well, every day I've been wearing a Black themed shirt to work, or I've been attempting to. Something either political and or Black. So I definitely still slide in there my reproductive freedom shirt. But I have a shirt that says, it says, all history is Black history. Before there was regular history, there was Black history. Something like that it says.
Amen.
I've got my African American Museum of Culture shirt that I have in the rotation. I have a Black Power shirt that I have in rotation. I also have a vintage Essence 1996 t-shirt, Essence Music Festival t-shirt. I got all kinds of stuff for Blackity Black. I threw Michael in there. I've thrown Janet in there. Listen, if you're Black, this is our month. Okay?
We need a longer month.
And we need
a longer month.
And we need a longer month.
Shout out to Whitney Houston, who said we need a longer month, and it echoes across the years, because she was right.
Yeah. They picked the
Especially,
shortest month
I feel
and
like
then tried to snatch it. They picked the shortest month of the year and then tried to snatch it.
Well, I feel like especially this year, we kind of need a longer month, guys, because we've just been going through so much. There's been so many attacks on spaces and people. And this is not a we're not a political podcast, okay? However, we believe in LOVE.
Like
Tolerance,
yeah.
inclusion. We believe in equity. We believe in making things right. We believe in people being treated fairly.
Yeah.
And that's going to always make somebody uncomfortable, because if someone's being treated unfairly, that means there's someone doing the unfair treatment.
Amen.
But guess what? You got to get your soul right. You got to cleanse your soul. You got to clean it up, okay? So if you're uncomfortable, you need to talk to God about why you're uncomfortable and figure out if it's you, because maybe it's you. I'm just throwing it out there. But I love it. I'm going to tell the folks about mine. So I've got my Black Panther Party, the People's Free Food Program sweatshirt on. And of course, if you're not familiar with the Black Panther Party, established in the late 1960s by Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton, the People's Food Program, sponsored by the Black Panther Party, was put in place to feed poor Black kids, right, before they went to school, because we know that nutrition is so important to understanding once you get to class. And FYI, I believe this program is the precursor to those free programs that were actually implemented in public schools to feed kids before school. So shout out to the Black Panther Party, to Huey P. Newton, to Bobby Seale, to Elaine Brown, the first chairwoman of the Black Panther Party. We salute.
I love her.
She said I got all the money.
If you haven't read her book, honey, listen. She was a thug. Good for her. Love that.
She was a thug.
Thug.
How many G's you put on thug right there?
Like 5.
Because
that's what she was. She was an OG thug too.
That's fair.
Like she would walk around with a gun like it won't nothing. Like she was a OG thug. They were pulling up at police stops behind the police to police the police. Okay, that's some thug shit right there.
That's some thug shit. So if you're not familiar with the Black Panther Party, take Black History Month. Take every month, right? We're still Black History 365. Learn something new. Learn something you didn't know before. Challenge yourself. We're trying to do it every day, and we hope that this episode of the Black Jackson Estate podcast also challenges you to think. Hopefully it challenges us to think some of our perceptions and things. I want to say this. We've been doing our Black History Month spotlight for a minute now. I'm going to take a moment to read. We started this podcast in 2019, but we've been doing our spotlight. I'm going to read over here, baby. We started doing the Black History Month spotlight in 2022. We started with Michael Jackson's Black musical influences. You know, James Brown met the call to action on that podcast. There's also some other great musicians we know Michael pulled from that we paid homage to in 2022. We also did Michael Jackson's dance influences and teachers, phenomenal artists that we wanted to shout out in 2023. Fatima Robinson, and who else did we put? Who else made the cut? So many great
influences.
Dance influences.
The Nicholas brothers.
The Nicholas brothers.
Fatima Robinson, of course. We had oh my gosh, I can't think of his name. That choreographed. Oh my gosh, I can't think of his name right now. It's not coming to me. But yeah, we had really good. I think we definitely had James Brown on there. I'm pretty sure. That was the episode that we did with Taj and Dr. Green.
And on to 2024, we did the Black History Month Spotlight was the Gospel According to Michael, where we shouted out some amazing gospel artists who sampled, were influenced by Michael Jackson, and incorporated that into the Hallelujah, Amen, and Praise God, Praise Jesus. And we always made mention that the one and only Kirk Franklin is the Michael Jackson of gospel music. Shout out to Kirk Franklin. You gotta go back and listen to all of that. Right? Because today we're talking about our Black History Month spotlight is Michael Jackson's hair story. I actually tried to call it like I Shall Wear a Crown, Michael Jackson's hair story, but it was too wordy. But if you know, you know. That's all I can say.
Oh
if you know, then you know.
You sound like a friend of ours that we both know, whose name starts with a W, who says, "It's my crown. My hair is my crown." Every time I do her hair, my hair is my crown, Toya. That's the energy that gives. I shall wear a crown.
I shall wear a crown.
Same energy.
If you know what that is, that means you grew up probably in the Black church. Shout out to the Black church. I shall wear a crown, but I shortened it. Michael Jackson's hair story. So let's get into it. We're back for season 7. I'm so excited to talk about this. User 1.5, you are the resident expert as the cosmetologist of the group.
I'm here.
Telling us all to trim our edges, baby. Don't hold on to them dead ass edges. They gone,
Please
baby.
trim your hair. Your hair does not look longer. It looks dusty. Please get a trim.
Well, you need to say it a little nicer.
regularly.
It doesn't feel, say it a little nicer.
Oh, it's so long. No, it's long and shaggy. You look like you was thrown away. Please get a trim.
She says that with love, guys. Love. But she's going to actually lead us into this wonderful discussion about hair, about Michael Jackson's hair. And you might be going, oh my God, y'all gonna talk about hair in Black History Month. If you are Black or you are familiar with our community, you know that hair is a thing, okay? It's not simply, oh, let me make sure I look good today. It means so much to us, and there is a reason, and there is a history, and there are ancestral roots behind it. And Michael Jackson was no exemption from that reality. So let's kick it off. Let's get into it. User 1.5, I'm going to turn the tables to you and let you get us talking about why hair is so important in the Black community.
Yeah, so first I want to give a shout out to OG Tara in our Patreon. This was your idea, good sis, over there in the UK. And we appreciate the suggestion. Here it is. You asked for it, and we hope we deliver. Okay, so shout out to OG Tara. Thank you for this wonderful idea to kick off season 7. So let's start at the beginning. So of course we're going to talk about Michael's hair because as we all know as Michael Jackson fans, there are many iterations of Michael Jackson's hair. Some are wonderful, some are good, and some are questionable. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly in this episode. But in order to understand that, we first have to give you guys a history lesson because we are a teaching podcast. So let's start with the history of hair in the African American community. So pre-slavery in Africa, hair for Black women especially, but men as well, was sacred. So essentially, your hair told a story about you. Whatever style, whatever braid pattern, whatever cornrows, twists, all of those date back to as far back as 3500 BC in Africa. Whatever your hairstyle was, it indicated a lot of things to the people looking at you. And it could indicate things such as if someone was of the upper class or nobility, royalty or not. It could also indicate your marital status, what your religion was. African women would also shave their heads as a sign of mourning. So depending on who you were and what you were trying to relay to other people, your hair told a story. Okay. And once the Europeans decided to go to West Africa and steal those good people from their homeland, they saw their hair. They realized that not only was their language a threat to them because they could communicate and the slave traders didn't know what they were saying, but they could also communicate via their hair. They could let each other know if they were from the same region, the same tribe, the same whatever, and create some kind of camaraderie. And the slave trader said, absolutely the F not. So what they were doing while on the boat in the Middle Passage, where they were shaving these women's hair and men's, these slaves, they were shaving their heads and forcing them to assimilate to a more Eurocentric form. What they called our hair was, what was the word they used? Wool.
They said it was wool, baby.
They said it was wool.
It was wool.
They did not believe.
From a sheep. I want to be clear. Y'all know where wool come from, right? I just want to take a moment.
Sheep are soft if they clean. Have you ever
Well,
one?
bye-bye black sheep. Have you any wool? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 3 bags full. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if it's racist. I don't know. It's none of my business. I'm just saying y'all do know where wool comes from. It comes from a sheep. And it can be soft, but it's quite...
It's soft.
Run your fingers through some calf.
It's soft. It's
I'm just going to leave it there. Because you're giving the people a history lesson. I'm going to be quiet.
Yeah.
Okay? Go ahead.
So that is during slavery. Now, there are a lot of things that slaves did to rebel during slavery. I believe we talked about, I don't remember which episode it was, but I remember talking about how slaves, when they were going to run away, what they would do is they would map out the path for where the runaways needed to go in cornrows on the hair. And so, and the slave masters, the people that were holding them in captivity, had no idea what these like symbols meant. But the slaves knew what they meant because they were a holdover from their African ancestry. Now, I want to jump forward a little bit in time. 1786. In New Orleans, Louisiana, the governor of New Orleans passed a law called the Tignon Law. And I didn't know anything about this until I started doing research. So the Tignon Law required that all women of color had their hair covered in public. Why? Because the women, especially the Creole women, and if you don't know what Creole women are women that are Black and French mixed, mostly down in that New Orleans, Texas a little bit, but definitely down in that Louisiana area. So the Tignon Law took effect because Creole women of that era, and this is the late 1700s, began hearkening back to their ancestral days, and they started styling their hair in these huge, ornate, beautiful styles. And the governor of the state of Louisiana said, y'all rise past y'all station now. So cover your hair because y'all got a little system going on, a little signal going on we don't know about, and we don't like it. So it was a law that they had to cover their hair. And I want to read from the article that I got it from. So it says, in order to diminish, quote, excessive attention to dress among women of color, Spanish colonial governor Don Esteban Miro enacted the Tignon laws in 1786 that, quote, prohibited Creole women of color from displaying excessive attention to dress in the streets of New Orleans. Creole women of color were required to wear a tignon, or a scarf or handkerchief, to cover their hair as a way to indicate that they belonged to the slave class, despite the fact that some of these women were freed slaves. These women were affected by the law, in fact, and they covered their hair, but they boldly did it with elaborate fabrics and jewels, an action which technically met the letter of the law, but it also allowed them to maintain their standards of fashion and beauty. They effectively reinterpreted the law without technically breaking the law. So I want to stop there for a second. User one, what do you think about the Tignon law and how Black women, man, we are so creative, how they got around being forced into this subservient kind of place of cover your hair because you think you're better than us, and I want everybody to know you're a slave. That's why your hair is covered.
Well, there's an anger that boils inside me, okay, especially during Black History Month, because we were just, the mistreatment, and then I'm being serious. We can't really put into words the experience of the enslaved and the newly freed, or the free but Black Africans,
but Black.
You know, that it had to live in these very oppressive times, and in times where just them expressing who they were was they were under constant assault. We can say that even in today's society, because probably up until our generation, you had a very big let's conform to get ahead, because they understood that you could get ahead if you can conform. So, and that took a chance in hair as well, right? People would straighten their hair. They would cover their natural hair. They would do different things to hide the natural look of their hair so that they could be more assimilated and accepted by a wider audience, by the white majority, right? The power structure majority. So this is just reminding me that this has been going on for hundreds of years in this country. And it's hurtful. I'm just to be honest about the emotions that you feel. I think as a Black person, it's hurtful. It's sad, and it feels hopeless in some ways, but you also see where we've progressed. I wanted you to take a moment, because we got all the way to the 1700s, but we're still inside of slavery. And so I want you to continue, but I also will want to bring up some passages from this book. I want to give a big shout out to HAIRStory by Ayanna D. Bird and Lori Tharps. This book is wonderful. If you want to learn more about Black hair from Africa to America, definitely pick this up. It's a wonderful resource, and it definitely helps us be more understanding of the journey of Black hair in the Americas. So yeah, how I feel about old dude, my man's. Governor. Hey, I always got to say, we're going to put it on him as the named governor, but he's just reflecting the will and the desire.
Correct.
So
Right.
all the nameless, faceless people, it's never something happening in a vacuum. He didn't just wake up one day and say, "Oh, I want to do this." Maybe he agreed with it, but it also was the collective group of us white citizens who decided that this should be done for reasons that were not legitimate,
Yeah.
in
I
any
mean,
way, shape, or
that,
form.
like, this law reminds me of In The Color Purple. There's a line that Whoopi Goldberg says as Celie. She says, folks don't like anybody being too proud or too free. And for some reason, it just irked them that these women had this problem. I mean, they were Creole, so they had absolutely beautiful hair. And they were styling it and putting decorations in it and going out and being proud of who they were and what they looked like, and it for some reason just got under their skin to the point that they made a law: you have to cover your hair in order to walk around the streets of New Orleans. It just
And you know what
blows
though?
my mind.
You just reminded me. It made me think of when you said the color purple. Purple. Shout out to North Carolina, whose scenes from the color purple were shot in our state. Shout out to us here in North Carolina. But it also reminded me. Shout out to me. Shout out to us.
You shout out everybody. Just shout out everybody. Start with the everybody shout out in the beginning.
Shout out
Shout
to
out to
us.
everybody.
But I mean, I want to say this because you made me think of something. It also made me think of Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou, and the whole cadence of that piece, of that poem, is pride, and how that pride can cause others to feel a certain sort of way, right? And people don't like that when you stretch your stuff, when you show that you are proud of who you are, that there's
Especially
nothing
if they feel
about
like
you that you're not proud of.
You shouldn't be proud. If they feel
Absolutely.
like you should just be sitting in the corner crying about your situation, but you're not. That pisses people off.
Or that your pride is a threat somehow, right? Somehow being proud, you being proud, having your head held high is a threat to their dominance and the power structure. So it's really interesting how hair, even something you might feel is very innocuous or just a throwaway, feeds into white supremacy, racism, and also not just those negatives, but also cultural understanding and love for self and love for your ancestral roots and where you come from. So it's all mixed in there. If you think we're being heavy-handed when we talk about what happened in history, get over it. You can cut this podcast off because it's true, and we're not going to act like it's not to make anybody more comfortable. Sometimes to grow, you got to be uncomfortable, and we're not saying it in a way that is hopefully disrespectful. It's just the truth, right? And it's our collective cultural's lived experience, right? It's my grandma's lived experience. It's her mama's lived experience, and they are all inside of me. So I can't act like it doesn't have an impact, very personally so. But these are just the facts, baby.
Yeah.
If you don't like the facts,
Yeah.
turn on Fox News, because they got a lot of stuff over there that's not based in facts. If you don't like the facts, you can probably turn on CNN and do that too. So, I mean, listen, if you don't like the facts, go talk to the mass media. They got plenty of hoobla gobbla gobbla over there. Okay. We come with the facts, and if we get something wrong, we issue an amplification and clarification and correction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boom.
And I will say, there are other hair stories in other cultures. I mean, if you think about Islamic women cover their hair as a sign of, submission and respect, right? Like there are other hair stories out there. This is just our hair story. So we're going to skip ahead now to the early 1900s. So we go from women being forced to cover their hair to the end of slavery, where women are no longer forced to live or to cover their hair. And
hold on, user 1.5. Before you get there, I want to talk about, because we talked about this briefly before we even started recording. I want to talk about what the slaves were doing for their hair, right? They came from Africa, where there was a rich tradition of hair and how you cared for your hair. And like you said, all the things that it symbolized as far as status and as far as maybe things that were happening in your life events. So I want to talk about what the slaves were doing with their hair, because slavery wasn't built around, are y'all comfortable? You got everything you need to be great? It was get to work. And it was so brutal, especially at the beginning, that they were running through so many Africans so quickly because they were dying so fast because of the way they were being treated and worked in the Americas and the Caribbean. We're talking about the Americas right now, but I want to talk about this because I think this is really interesting and something people probably don't know. So I'm just going to read straight from the book HAIRStory. And it says that a tool to replace African combs, the slaves used sheep fleece carding tools to untangle their hair. Now listen, I don't even know what the hell that is. Do you?
I don't know what you said. Sheep fleeced what?
Sheep fleece carding tools.
I think it's the stuff they used to use maybe to pick out the fleece as they, because you ever seen somebody shave a sheep? It gets real
right,
it catches. I don't know what to say. Like it's because it's so thick, it catches. I think it's whatever you use to kind of untangle that.
And maybe listen, y'all, this stuff is really interesting, and it's also very heartbreaking, right? Because you're talking about a people who, when they were in Africa, they understood the importance of their hair and what it meant to them, and then to come to a place where you have no way to care for something that's so integral to your identity. You're trying to figure out ways to do it, and it's difficult. As a result of some of these very harsh tools, scalp diseases like ringworm became pervasive among slave populations, as did lice infestations. And when an outbreak of ringworm occurred, slaves commonly tied a rag around their heads to cover the unsightly scabs left by the affliction. And a worse infection would then ensue, creating a vicious cycle of hair problems, breakage, and patchy baldness. And also, I'm going to just read a little more. They often styled their hair in imitation of their white owners. So, using 1.5, I just want to get your feedback. Well, now we're talking about the things you use to style your hair. They don't have the things that they were accustomed to using in Africa. They take to these very unsafe and unsanitary measures because it's all they have. What are your thoughts about just even that attempt or the ingenuity? It's a survival mechanism at that point.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there's no way that you can work as hard as these people worked and not take care of your hair, not comb your hair, not wash it, and have some way of kind of taming it so that you can get by. Otherwise, you end up with a matted hot mess where you can have all kinds of living in it, growing in it. It gets really nasty very quickly. And so kudos to them for even being able to figure out what they could use. This also makes me it reminds me of why so many early patents for a lot of things we use were invented by Black people, because we had to figure out how to make our lives easier with what we had. And so good for them. I hate that they got all of these scalp diseases, lice, ringworm, etc. But I feel like, lice was also pervasive among the white population as well. I mean, hygiene was not number one for a lot of people. So, it just doesn't, I'm not shocked about the ringworm and the lice. And they probably got a lot of it from, the big house, if we're going to be honest.
They were learning what hygiene was, right? We're still learning what hygiene is. Some people are. Do not
some of us know, some of
what
us don't.
Basic hygiene is. It's still a learning process, and it was certainly a learning process in times past where we were starting to better understand the relationship between,
washing,
these things that you kind of take for granted today. Yeah. Don't say that. Don't say washing, because they was washing their ass. I don't know.
They didn't wash every day. That wasn't a thing.
The Europeans don't wash every day today.
A lot of them thought that if you washed off the dirt, it would make you sicker.
Well, first of all, it's like a film of dirt, I think they say, protect you.
No, that's the bacteria that naturally happens in your skin. That ain't dirt. That's your dirt? Natural body's bacteria.
I'm not saying I do it. I'm saying that in some European countries, if I'm wrong, Europe, y'all tell me, they don't bathe every day.
Y'all stay coming for Europe on this podcast.
And I'm not coming for Europe on no podcast. I'm just saying that I don't think they bathe every day because they say you're not supposed to, because that film's supposed to protect you. Okay, I don't know. Y'all let me know.
And if that works for y'all, I love that. I wash.
First of all, some people in America, a lot of Americans don't wash every day. They don't wash their ass. They don't wash their tits. They don't wash their. Wow. I'm sorry, and the tits.
You really need.
They don't wash their pits. They don't wash it.
Season premiere.
It is a season premiere. Shout out to the Black Jackson State podcast. So I want to. I want to read this too, okay? So instead of so also right in Africa, Africans were using different juices and herbs and herbs and berries, juices and herbs for their hair, okay? Came to America, none of that, right? So all the oils and stuff they didn't have anymore. So the slaves started using oil-based products like, I want you guys to guess. Take 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know what your
That
guesses
wasn't
were.
5 seconds.
I don't know what your guesses were, but I'm gonna tell you, okay?
It's
Bacon
off the rails.
grease,
Okay.
bacon grease, and butter
I know they smelled
to condition and
tasty.
soften the hair, to
Yeah.
prepare it for straightening, and to make it shine. Old black people love a shiny. Old black people love a
Still
shiny
do.
head of hair. My
Still
grandma
do.
loved the shiny. Her hair wasn't set if it wasn't shiny. First
Not
and
one
foremost,
hair moves. Not one hair moves.
it don't move. It's
When
shiny.
you move, it don't move.
They also use cornmeal and kerosene as scalp cleaners and coffee for a dye for many women. And let me talk about what the men were using. So men they would slick axle grease that was meant for wagon wheels on their hair it was a combo that would dye the hair and straighten it. And women would slather their hair with butter, bacon fat. We already talked about that. Goose grease. And then they use a butter knife, and I really want you to talk about this using 1.5 since you're a professional. They use a butter knife that they heated over a can over a fire as a crude curling iron. This is all in slavery, folks. So we're talking about the slave up until the 18th. Well, this is during slavery, and they took these practices, I'm sure, after, because it's all they had, right? Until certain things started to come along. Shout out to Madam C.J. Walker. And so, using 1.5, tell me about what you think, as a professional, about these methods and these tactics. They did not have the oils, the natural oils and herbs that they had back in Africa. They used what they could. What are your thoughts on that reality for the slave population?
Again, this is what black people have always done. Use what you got to get what you want. Very smart, very smart. To use a butter knife, heat it over a can and curl your hair, brilliant. It's metal. It's essentially what a hot curler is now. It's not coated in ceramic or titanium, but it is essentially the same thing. Think about a Marcel or a hot comb or something like the old school that you would put on a stove. Same kind of method. So very smart. Probably gave them some nice, tight, sizzling curls, especially if they were putting bacon grease on their hair. I know it was just as they were doing it.
Hair smelled good.
They were burning their hair as they did it. But you know what? It didn't make no difference. It looked good.
Hair smelled like breakfast. Hair smelling like breakfast.
It looked good. Those oils are way too heavy and way too thick.
First of all, and I'm not laughing because, listen, they did what they listen. This is my ancestors. They did what they could, okay? But the bacon grease is extreme. But I also want to say this. They were in extreme times, okay? I want to say this too.
I'm sure they probably didn't have to do their hair for a couple of weeks. That grease, I know it sat there and it lived there until they washed their hair. They probably had to wash their hair multiple times to even get it out. I love it.
You're right.
I love it.
I want to say this because I want to get your feedback because you are the professional, okay? Sometimes this is straight from the book, y'all. HAIRStory, check it out. We'll put a link in the show notes so you can go buy it, and it's just absolutely fascinating. Everyone should read it, honestly. Black people definitely should read this to better understand your history, right? But the book also says that women would wrap their hair in string of nylon, cotton, or eelskin to decrease the kink and leave looser curls. Some slave mothers took to wrapping their children's hair to start training it to go straight as early as infancy. The most mordant device used to straighten the hair was lye mixed with potatoes to decrease its caustic nature. This creamy concoction was smeared on the hair and the lye would straighten the curls. Unfortunately, it could also eat the skin right off of your head. So I want to take a moment to ask you, user 1.5, as a hair professional, and we see this today. We see it in the news about the chemicals that Black women have used for many, many years, causing cancer, causing medical issues. And this same thing, we're seeing it here hundreds of years ago. So this is a pervasive and a very damaging and unhealthy thing you see across this population, all based on their removal from their homeland to a place that had no respect for them as human, where they were trying to conform in such a way and also maintain some sort of dignity, because hair was dignity in a new land. Give me your thoughts on the chemicals, the things we were doing then that were causing harm, and how you see that connect to what you see today in your profession.
So this also actually goes into what I was going to say next, which was the early 1900s. You have Madam C.J. Walker, you have Miss Annie, I can't think of her, Annie Malone, who had these relaxers that they were lye based. So it's the same thing. They were using lye to straighten the hair, um, so that they didn't have to do as much work, because any black person or person of color, you don't have to be black. If you have curly hair and you want to straighten it and keep it straight, it's work. And so they were doing these things to make their lives easier. I remember our grandmother saying that they used to take strips of newspaper or paper bags and roll their hair so that they would have curls the next day. So this even stretches into the early 1900s, early to mid 1900s, where women were still using these methods because it is what they were taught from their ancestors. These are, again, I'm only going to say that this is brilliant. Now, did they know that the lye was going to melt their skin off? Obviously not. They didn't know that when they first started, right?
Well, you knew when it happened.
Well,
when
and
you
it's like with a lot of things. Maybe it don't happen to you the first, second, third, fourth, fifth time, but it happens to you at some point. But they
and
were
then
willing
sis, we gotta stop because listen.
They were willing to take the risk because they wanted a certain look, and looking a certain way was important for, I would say, for the older ones to teach to their children, because they knew that that was how they were going to get by and have an easier life. It wasn't necessarily because they wanted to do it. It was because they were like, listen, if you do this, then this happens. You're going to live an easier life. And I'll say it, even in 2025, I just took my braids out. I've had braids for the last 2 years, different iterations of braids. Okay. And not one of my clients, the comments I got when I had braids in were, oh, those are neat. Oh, how do you do that? Is that all your hair? As soon as I straighten my hair, oh my God, I love your hair. It looks so good. Right? So even in 2025, and nobody is saying anything to be nasty or malicious, I don't believe that. But even in 2025, there's still this idea that you as a black woman look a lot better if you have straight, Eurocentric hair. I get the most compliments on this hair.
And you know what I think it is? And like when I decided to go natural, it was really based on this idea that so much had been ingrained in us, that so much is ingrained in black people, that if your hair is straight, that's the way to go, right? It needs to look this way. It needs to mimic a European look. This is also going back hundreds of years. And I said, that can't be the basis of how I feel about myself. I need to be okay and accept and love who I am, right? But the point being this, it's exactly what you said, right? You have to, there's so much conditioning over years and decades and centuries, right, that black people are trying to undo about how they feel about their hair. I hate it when black women say, oh, I wear this because my hair is not manageable. Like, this makes my hair more manageable. I know they don't mean it as a slight, but to me, you're saying something about yourself. What's wrong with your hair is manageable. You might not know how to manage it, and now you need to unpack why that is. You know, because maybe you've been accustomed to, for all your life, doing things to make it appear more Eurocentric, which for us historically has been, like you said, to be more accepted, to help you get to a better place in society, and to help you have an easier life if you could assimilate and appear more like Europeans. So I hate that phrase, and I don't blame the people. I know why they're saying it, because people say that all the time. They say, oh, I want my hair to be more manageable. I'm thinking the hair growing out of your head as it grows out is manageable. You don't know how to manage it, and you need to maybe explore that, because them kinks is gonna kink, baby.
See,
and maybe you need to love your kinks.
I don't think that way. But I'm a hairstylist, and I talk to women all day about their hair. So in my mind, if somebody says it's not manageable, obviously you don't have the tools to do that. But a lot of it is that they don't want to do that. It's not that they hate themselves. It's that they are lazy and they don't want to do what it takes, because this is a lot of work. Natural African Afrocentric hair is a lot of work. That's why the women kept it braided in Africa. That's why they had braids and cornrows and Bantu knots.
Right, but those same women you're talking about could get their braids, but they don't.
But that's what I'm saying. They're lazy.
But is it about manage? Well, they could pay somebody else to do it. So is it manageable, or is it I don't get as much attention. I'm not seen as more attractive with the braids versus
Well,
with
that's
the
that you would have
straights.
to ask them, and that's a conversation for them and their therapist
Listen,
to
I'm
unpack.
just saying,
I don't get into that.
I'm saying I think that's what it is. As a black woman, I'm saying I think that's a large part of it. I'm not saying I think it's everybody, but I think a lot of people feel that I'm not pretty unless it looks like unless I got the bundles. I'm not going to be paid attention to without it. That's me. I'm saying that definitely is a segment of it. I'm not saying it's everybody. I think what you're saying is true as well. There are some people who just truly have no concept
They
of
just
what it
yeah,
means to take care of their own hair
and
as it grows
and
out of their head.
I feel like the further away from slavery that we get as black women, first of all, some of those customs won't die, and they weren't good for the hair then, and they're not good for the hair now. I argue with black women all the time about why you don't need to put grease on your scalp, while oil and grease
Girl, we
is
love
for
a
the
good blue
hair.
magic. We love a good blue
And
magic.
that's fine, but that's the conversation I have quite a bit because it's so ingrained in us that that is
Yeah.
what you need to do to make your hair grow, and
Many
that's
years.
not necessarily the truth. But I don't
Yeah.
argue. Like, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I'm just going to tell you what the facts are, and then you can decide from there. If you want to put blue
Well,
magic in,
girl,
that's your,
listen, let me
those are your
say, ain't nothing wrong with telling people they wrong. They ain't got to accept it, but you still wrong.
Hair is so personal to so many
It is.
people,
It's very
and the
personal.
things that they believe about their hair is so personal to them that it is very difficult, even as a hairstylist, to tell to say like you're wrong, because in their mind I'm
Yeah.
saying you're wrong, your mama's wrong, your grandma's wrong, this person's wrong. So it's very difficult. It's definitely a line I have to walk with my African American clients, especially, but with a lot of clients, but especially with African American clients, because I don't want to offend them for their core beliefs, because this is ingrained in them and it's so
Yeah.
personal to them.
Well, yeah, there's tact to
And
all things. I'm
so,
not saying that.
when I
Yeah.
give this information and I'm like, this is actually hurting you and not helping you, they go home and do it anyway because they believe what I'm telling them in this moment.
Right.
And that's fine. Right?
I'm not even mad at that. You know why? Because like habits are hard to change. Habits that are generational, oh my God, that's super hard to change. What we did in the 1800s, the early 1900s, it's still a part of our DNA. And it is difficult to convince someone that, okay, hold on, your grandmama's mama and your mama's mama, everybody is actually wrong about this. That blue magic does not work. That bacon grease they was using, that then you made a replica of in some other form, it actually is not help. It's just sitting on your hair, clogging it down. It's really difficult. I say all that to say, right, to route it back around, because we're going to get into Michael Jackson, guys, really soon here. But as we say, we're a learning podcast. You're going to learn something over here, baby. You ain't going to leave here and not learn something. And we learn something from you guys. But to route it back around, it is very difficult in your profession. It's hard to convince people of things that they have when it comes from a source for them that is trustworthy. They trust their grandma. They trust the wisdom that grandma holds, which holds generations of wisdom in their family. You're not going to just undo that because you say,
and I understand that. That's why I don't argue.
that's
with
not
you.
right. So
I
you don't
understand
argue.
that. Yep.
You try to educate. You try to say, hey, listen, I'm
I do
telling
my
you,
best.
it's kind of like, I'm telling you one thing, you can do what you want, but I want you to have this information. What you do with it, you do.
That
But
is
I'm
literally
telling you
what I tell
what it
people.
is. Now, I want to say this in defense of the scalp greasers. When you part that scalp and you hit that line of that grease and it goes straight back,
And the grease is fine.
it feel good.
You need to wash it out within 24 to 48 hours. That's all I'm saying. You could put it on if it makes your soul happy.
It
But you need to
feel
wash it out.
good.
But this is not a podcast about your hair right now in this moment.
Okay.
So we're gonna jump to Madam CJ Walker, Miss Annie Malone, who was Madam CJ Walker before Madam CJ Walker. Okay. And these
Did she
two
steal
ladies,
from her? Did she really? I saw the Netflix series. Is it true?
No,
Did she steal from her?
that was not true.
That wasn't true?
That wasn't true.
Okay.
So in the early 90s, they created, the two of them, separately created mass-produced hair products, treatments, and styling techniques for black women. They were some of the first. They were two of the first women. Madam C.J. Walker was the first self-made millionaire, black self-made millionaire in this country. Miss Annie Malone could have been, but it was a lot going on there too. But they were the first to create a mass kind of protocol for black women and black hair care and products, and they were highly successful. And they really carried us in the black hair journey up to about the 1960s, okay? Women were relaxing their hair, they were hot combing their hair, they were doing all of these things to make their hair straight and more Eurocentric. Then we get to the 1960s and the civil rights movement. And what the civil rights movement saw was an era of natural and traditional hairstyles. People wanted to feel closer to their ancestors. They wanted to go back to what their ancestors were doing, and they did this as a sign of liberation and self-pride. That is what the 1960s and 70s brought for Black hair care. And then we roll into the 80s with Mr. Jerry Redding. And if y'all want to guess, I give you one guess. What is Mr. Jerry Redding famous for? User one.
Everybody know my man's got y'all with that Jerry curl.
The Jerry curl.
And listen.
And that's Michael's Thriller era right there.
That's Michael's Thriller era. But I want to back up because now we are in the thick of it. Y'all said, when y'all going to talk about Michael? When y'all going to talk about Michael Jackson? I don't know that this is a podcast about Michael Jackson because I never Michael Jackson. We had to bring you up so we could talk about Michael's hair. And now you are primed. You are prepped. You are primed to talk about Michael Jackson. Let's back up a little bit because you said the 60s. So let's rewind the time. The 60s is ending. Michael's born in the 50s. We're ending the baby boomer, the boomer era. Yeah. Michael's a boomer. And I know a lot of fans don't like to just accept that fact.
The boomers they're a special generation.
Let's talk about the boomers in hair, right? Boomers are the children of folks whose parents came out of potentially, or their parents definitely may have come out of slavery, right? So they are engulfing a lot of those old norms, understandings about their hair, and how they need to move in society. So let's talk about the boomer generation. Our mother's a boomer, and they are very unique. They are very different. The Black boomers are fastidious about their hair, and they like it a certain way. And Michael's no different. Michael Jackson was no different. He liked his hair a certain way. Talk to me using 1.5, just your opinion. How did the boomers like their hair? What's they do? What they like to do? What's their prototype for the boomer generation? What's their thing?
First of all, the boomers are a special generation. They are. If you've ever talked to a boomer, they're probably never wrong. And I love it. I love that for them. You know, it's just the generation. And they have high morals. They'll tell you
very
everything you should and shouldn't be doing. They can tell you exactly what your problem is within the first 2 seconds of knowing you. But and they have a good eye. You know, if you have tattoos, bunch of piercings, you look a little different, they really can tell that you're a delinquent. I love them. Okay, personally. Shout out to all the boomers. We love y'all. We love y'all.
They gonna get you. Remember, y'all, it's usually 1.5.
The boomers, though, every boomer that I have is very persnickety about their hair. They want it in place all the time. They don't play about the placement of their hair. And they like it however they like it. So if they like to wear it straight, they want it completely straight all the time. If they like to wear it curly, they want to wear it curly all the time. Now, one thing I will say about the boomers, especially Black women boomers, they don't do no kinks and curls. They don't do no kinks and curls. They don't believe in it. Now, they might be natural, but they want you to press it to high heaven. They don't want, and grease. They want you to put grease on it so that it really lays down. Okay? They don't like no frizz or nothing like that. They like it pressed and pristine. Okay. Like I think about our mother, like I do her hair. She wants it to look a particular way. If it's too much curl in it, even if it's a beautiful curl, gorgeous curl, she's like, no, it's nappy. I don't want it. She doesn't like it.
Beautiful gown.
They're very particular and persnickety about their hair, but they also are one of the last generations that will actually do stuff to their hair at night so that it looks the way they want it to look the next day. So like they'll roll their hair, they'll wrap it up. A lot of later generations want to go to sleep and wake up beautiful. The boomers know you got to put some work in if you want to look perfect every day, which is their goal. They want to look perfect every day. And I love that for them. I really do.
They are let me esteem the boomer generation because they are a generation that, I mean, it was tough. You're talking about folks who came up in the civil rights era.
They were the ones sitting at the lunch counters, getting spat on, getting dogs sent out. That was their generation.
Those older boomers, yeah, they definitely were.
Mm-hmm.
And so let me give them their flowers right now because everybody say the boomers and the millennials, but it's
I don't
like
know
we
how we
always
get in
beefing.
stuff. We don't even be
I don't
doing nothing.
know.
We
We
trying to eat
don't.
our snacks, lay in the bed, and
We
watch
just
TV.
be
We're not bothering nobody.
minding our business. But I just want to
We
give
don't care what you do.
I want to give the boomers their due respect and props. This was a generation, man. Y'all was hardcore. They were hardcore. They took the indignities. They took it on the chin because they knew how to survive in a time I don't even think we can really understand. And they knew that hair was also a part of survival, right? The more you can become less threatening, it doesn't mean you hate yourself or like yourself less. You understand that the more you can become less threatening, the more you can achieve, right? But that same generation brought them afros in. So I want to give them like their props for just being so transformative for black hair from the start, from when they was doing. I remember in the Temptations movie, he said, "The longer you keep this in, the straighter it'll be." And they was like doing this to the hair, trying to get it straight to like the Black Power. Okay, where our boomer parents had the afros, had the, what I mean, were really Black Power in that era. So I want to give them their due credit and props. But Michael is in this group, y'all. And you see that when you start to look at him, his brothers, and their trajectory once they get to the national stage, right? They are boomer babies, and you can see it. By the time we get to Motown in the late 60s, by the time they hit the scene, Motown is done with the straight hair, like we just talked about, fanning it. And you see the younger generation of Motown artists coming in, trying to keep up with the more militant groups of music artists and labels. They got afros. These kids showed up with the afros, baby. They didn't straighten that hair out. And so I want you to talk about User 1.5, part of this hair journey, the Jackson brothers, the Jackson 5, hitting the scene for America with these big, beautiful afros. What was that in that time? And I want you to talk about the afro not just as a style, but a political statement.
So in that time, the afros really, I mean, first of all, it wasn't just any afro. Okay. You had to pick it out to make it as big as possible. Like you wanted your afro to take up as much space as possible in the 1960s and 70s. That was the statement, right? Like I'm taking up space and I'm here. Okay. So if you think about Michael when he was a teenager, dancing to Dancing Machine and that afro was just a bouncing, like that was what you wanted. And the point was basically to say, I'm not going to conform to your idea or your ideal of what I should be or who I should be. I am going to embrace my beauty, embrace my curls, embrace these things about me that you tell me are not civilized, right? And that was the political statement as well, right? Like, I'm going to be who I am. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. But you're not going to change my mind. The afros were, I watched an old hairstyling video in preparation for this because I'm like, how did y'all get them afro? The way they had to spray the afro sheen and then pick and then more afro sheen.
Yeah, how did they do it? Because it's beautiful. How did they do it? So it's like a spray, a pick, a spray.
It's like you had to like kind of pick it out when it was dry, but you started at the root because it was, you wanted to get all the way through it. So you started actually at the ends and then you would pick it out until you got it but then you had to pick it out all the way. And then you kind of sprayed it and you would pat it to make it like that perfectly round shape. Not like James on Good Time. His looked crazy sometimes. Like Esther Roll on Good Time. Her afro was hidden. Her afro was good. Hidden
James had a struggle fro because he was struggling. He was always struggling.
He got laid off. Out better though.
He got laid off from the car wash. He got laid off from everywhere. He went. Remember that time he thought he was going to get the job at the
why your
Sears or
wife
whatever.
Stay at home. Anyway, that's not the point.
That's why hers look good because she was at the house. She ain't had nothing else to do but pick that fro and make that oatmeal that Thelma could never get right.
And why she couldn't make no. Anyway, that's not.
Why Thelma couldn't make no oatmeal. But anyway,
you had Afro Sheen. You had all of these products now that are catering to more of a natural style. You also had, speaking of Good Times, you also had women going back into cornrows, and like children call them like lemonade braids, stuff like that, where they were in a design. What do they call them? Fulani braids. You had those kinds of styles also coming back with the beads on the end, just a throwback to their African ancestry.
Hold on, wait a minute. Crickling.
Yeah, all the beads and braid shells.
When she
song.
Aunt Son
Yeah.
took the sis braids out.
Yeah.
And she said, I don't know what your mama been doing. So she was like, I got to, what did Aunt Son, she straightened her hair, right? She straightened it.
She straightened it, yeah, because she did her hair when she did Viola's hair.
She did it. Your head ain't good like my baby Viola.
Yeah.
Again, like you talk about these cultural, shout out to Kirkland, shout out to Spike Lee, one of his best movies. But you're right? And they're all, and I've always wondered, like, how y'all get that afro? Like, I feel like I asked my mom and she was like, we just did it. And I'm like, that's not an answer.
They didn't.
How did you do it?
They didn't know. They don't know. Like, if you act, like, I look at hairstyles that I had from 20 years ago, and I'm like, I don't even remember how I did that. I don't remember what I did. Like, remember the snooky hump? And I used to do my hair like that.
I knew how to do. I still know how to do the hump.
I don't remember how I got it to lay like so smooth and perfect. Like I probably couldn't do it. It probably take me a little bit now to get it right. Like you just don't remember. In the moment, you knew how to do it.
You knew how to get it going. But yeah, I mean, listen. Shout out to if you're listening to this podcast, you are of the boomer generation. You're a boomer. If you're a baby boomer, baby, let us know. Shoot us some comments about how y'all got. How y'all got that afro? Because it was just so perfect. Y'all ever see the people, like the different groups, the famous people like the famous afros. Richard Roundtree had like a beautiful afro. Like these were beautiful afros, and they were so proud of them. Yeah. It makes me think of that governor you were talking about. This is the same thing he was trying to prevent. Yeah. Oh, you too pretty. You pretty. And I mean, they were gorgeous. I mean, you talking about that brown skin, that nappy hair. It was styled to perfection, think about baby.
Pam Grier, Foxy Brown.
Pam Grier,
one of the most
beautiful,
and desired women in her blaxploitation films. Yeah. And she had that big old afro. Like that was the thing. She was kicking ass with the afro. The afro was still good at the end of the movie. Like that was Angela Davis 60s and 70s. Yeah.
It hit in every genre of black life, right? Politics to culture to music to everything, right? Like it was hitting. And I want to talk about those 5 boys from Gary, Indiana, because they hit the scene. They become the biggest thing, nothing like them ever, to take over music. And it's not just black kids who are looking at them in awe and respecting themselves and feeling a sense of pride. It's also white kids being pulled into black culture in a new way, right? And it's causing America to reckon with its problem and to see that we all really are the same, right? And the Jackson 5 did that. Those afros they put on them kids. Shout out to Suzanne DePass, who I know made sure them afros were perfect.
Yeah.
Jackie's afro.
They all look good.
Tito's afro.
They all look
Rest
good.
in peace.
When they wanted to get fancy, they would roll it. They rolled the afro so that they had
Jermaine had that curly
curls.
afro thing going on.
Yeah.
I mean, shout out to Jermaine. We don't know what he's doing today with that the thing
fine.
He's got going on. But anyway,
it's fine.
These boys had beautiful afros. Michael's, as the lead singer, as the guy that's the face of the group, his was beautiful. He just looked so angelic, so sweet. In the 60s with this afro, and he spilled that over into the 70s, right?
I mean, think about the cover of Off the Wall.
Is that do we want to call that
let me get my album.
Afro,
I don't even know
or
Hold, please.